It's summer in the Garden State. Now's the time to get sweet Jersey Fresh peaches and nectarines. I'm New Jersey Secretary of Agriculture Doug Fisher reminding you to enjoy these Jersey Fresh gems. Find Jersey Fresh peaches today at your favorite market. Stay loyal to local Jersey Fresh.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got 'em!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
Another edition of Sports Bash Saturday, back in your life here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter, where you can watch the show, join the conversation. As always, text board is open, 609-403-0973. You can message the show directly through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, you can chime in on the YouTube stream as well. So whatever platform you are listening or consuming the show on, you can join the conversation. We're going to go deep into the NFL on today's show, as we got KC Joyner, the football scientist, writes for The Athletic now. You've heard him on the Sports Bash over the years. He'll be joining us coming up at 1 p.m. today. Also, Phillies lose a game last night that theoretically was probably the most underwhelming thing I've watched all week. I mean, you lose to the Dodgers. All right. They're arguably the best team in the National League. You lose to the Reds, and you barely make a whimper. Ugh. That's a bad look. So we got to get to them as well. And, of course, you guys can chime in, as always, on the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN as well. You know, the aftermath of the game on Thursday night is the fact that the Eagles obviously have things still to work on. They're not a complete product. And part of the preseason, the job is you're kind of finding your way. You're kind of figuring things out as you go along. But I think that one of the big positives coming out of it is you didn't suffer any injuries in the game. You saw growth from Jalen Hurts. And so you saw progress overall with the team. And to me, that's what the biggest thing is, at least in my opinion. Now, not that my opinion is the only opinion, but in my humble opinion, I believe that anything better than 4-11-1 last year is a growth. You didn't fire Doug Peterson just because you felt like it. You didn't move on from Carson Wentz just because. You didn't eat all that money on his contract just because you felt like it. You did these things because of the reality that what we saw last year was unacceptable on multiple fronts. You cannot be an NFL team and hope to ever have any level of success if you're going to go out there and you're going to embarrass yourselves. Because realistically, the Eagles last year embarrassed themselves. Remember how many times they ran Nate Gary out there and Nate Gary got eaten alive by tight ends? Remember all the interceptions that Carson Wentz threw? Remember all the plays that you were sitting back and wondering what the heck is going on out here, to paraphrase the great Vince Lombardi? Listen, half those guys aren't on the team anymore. Nate Gary gone. Carson Wentz gone. And you know what? It's cute and all that Doug and Frank Reich and Carson had a nice reunion yesterday in Indianapolis for a nice little photo op. That's cute, okay? But nobody cares anymore. It's over, all right? Let Indianapolis fawn over each other. Here in Philadelphia, we're moving on. We're not focused on the ex-girlfriend. We're moving on to the current situation. And the current relationship is new head coach, new quarterback. And the new head coach, at least so far, is living up to his side of the deal. So far, the new coach is doing his job. So far, the new quarterback is evolving and growing. Now, a little news that came out for the Eagles today. Devonta Smith had a helmet on at practice today, so he got in some individual drills. He is considered now day-to-day, no longer week-to-week, which is a big good sign for a guy. Anytime you're dealing with a knee injury, it's kind of a hit or miss thing. You're never 100% sure how someone's going to respond or react, how someone's going to bounce back. Everyone recovers differently. Everyone's speed of recovery is different. But the fact that he's going from week to week to day means two things. One, he could actually play maybe the preseason game before the end of the preseason, which would be great for the Eagles' offensive chemistry. And number two, it just means that he should be 100% by the time the season starts. So good news on the Devonta Smith front. Nick Sirianni still non-committal about the left tackle situation with Jordan Mailata, which tells me they're trying to trade Andre Dillard. You don't have Mailata play as well at practice and in a game as he has, and Dillard get injured and still try to act like Dillard has a chance to win the left tackle position unless you're trying to trade him. And at some point, they have to trade him. I think that the Dillard experiment, I don't want to say it's a failure, but it's definitely not a success. Unless the draft pick you get in return when you trade him is something valuable. And unless you're going to package Dillard and Ertz together, I doubt you're going to get a player in return. I believe it's going to be draft picks. I think that right now, Dillard is probably going to be the one draft pick that is going to haunt the Eagles the most. Because while over the last few years, they haven't always hit on every draft pick has typically been at least productive on some level. The reality is that Dillard can only play one position. He can't play right tackle. He can't kick inside a guard. He literally only can play left tackle. And that limitation makes him very not valuable for the Eagles. The Eagles are an organization, because of Jeff Stoutland, they love guys who can do multiple things, can play multiple positions, have versatility. And if you don't have versatility and you are an Eagles offensive lineman, that's a huge negative in the column for you. Huge problem. So when I look at Dillard moving forward, if they can trade him, great. I'm not a fan of his development because, when he came out of college, I thought he had a chance to have some good NFL value because in the NFL, it's becoming more and more of a passing league, and his best skill set in college was as a pass blocker. They only ran one running play the entire final season for him at Washington State. So he had plenty of experience as a pass blocker. But for whatever reason, whether it's his mental makeup, whether it's his coaching development, I don't know what it is. But whatever the reason is, he's just not good enough, man. Just not good enough. And I got to tell you, it's disappointing because I thought that he could be, I don't think he should be a great player in the NFL, but I thought he would be a bona fide left tackle starter for this team. I thought that you drafted your starter. Well, apparently they did draft their starter, but it was 2 years earlier with Jordan Mailata, who's turned into, I think his potential is so high, most people don't understand how high it is. I think that Mailata is not just your starting left tackle, but he has the potential to be a Pro Bowler. And he can fall in that lineage of very talented monster athletes who have played left tackle in the last 20 years, from Trey Thomas to Jason Peters to now Jordan Mailata. And Dillard could have been that guy, but the reality is, whether it's a mental block, whether it's just his attitude, or whether he's just limited, I don't know what it is, but apparently he can't evolve very well. At least not like Mailata can. So if you could trade him, trade him. All right. If you could move on from him, move on from him. And if you gotta play games like Sirianni is to boost his trade value, then you know what? More power to you. Now, of course, the Eagles, no pad practice today. They are off tomorrow, and then joint practices with the New England Patriots Monday and Tuesday. And remember, they got to cut another 5 players between now and early next week. in order to get down to that next cut level before the next preseason game, which is next Thursday night. You can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Coverage begins at 6:30 p.m. on Thursday night. Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, you can chime into the show, direct message show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Priority messaging through the app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. We're also live on YouTube and Twitter. And, of course, you can chime in at 609-403-0973 is the text board, so we get to all your messages in just a bit. A couple of things I want to hit on with the Eagles and the NFL. So, for those who didn't hear the news, it came down late yesterday, and it seems like a lot of the media outlets are trying to downplay this story, or they're only focusing on one aspect. So I know the popular story with Deshaun Watson is the NFL investigators, but that's not the real story. Okay, don't be fooled by the puppet master making you look to the right when they're actually doing something on the left. All right, how the NFL did or did not question those women is not a story, because one, it can't be substantiated, and two, let's be realistic, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. The real story, the real concrete story with Deshaun Watson is the report that came out late in the day Friday that Harris County grand jury has been convened to determine if there should be criminal charges brought against Deshaun Watson. Now, remember, the Harris County investigators and Houston Police Department are reportedly considering 10 criminal complaints against Deshaun Watson. And 2 of the complaints are by women who are not a part of the 22 civil lawsuits. So you potentially now have 24 women who are accusing Deshaun Watson of, frankly, just despicable behavior. And the reason why this is something we got to bring up is because I know there are people out there who are confused, who don't understand what is going on with Deshaun Watson. But I'm here to tell you, here's what's going on. I don't think he plays this year. I think the grand jury brings down some criminal charges. The NFL responds by putting him on the commissioner's exempt list or some other suspension. They let the situation play out. And teams like the Eagles are saved from the embarrassment, shall I call it, of having traded for a guy who now has to deal with all these legal issues for the next year. For whatever reason, the criminal investigation down in Houston is taking a lot longer than people expected. And for a team like the Eagles, they're looking pretty right now that they didn't give up all those assets to go get him. Teams like the Eagles and Carolina before they acquired Sam Darnold, a team like Miami, a team like Denver, all these teams were in conversations with Houston, according to multiple reports from ESPN and Fox Sports and The Athletic. Everyone who covers the NFL knew that teams were calling about Deshaun Watson. But they weren't going to trade for him unless they were sure about what was going on with the legal situation. And when you saw him get really cranky with the media, telling them, why do you keep asking questions? Why do you keep filling me? You think you're going to see some new bleep out here? I think Deshaun Watson's cracking. I think that the golden image of him that we all thought and believed about him is starting to be eroded. And we're finding out that this guy maybe isn't the model citizen that we thought. And listen, I know it's innocent until proven guilty, but if 24 different people are all accusing you of something, there's a possibility it might be right. If it was 1 or 2 people, all right, maybe someone had a bad experience with you. Maybe someone doesn't like you. Maybe someone's out there trying to get money from you, right? But criminal charges are a different conversation. It's not just lawsuits anymore. When you look at athletes who have gotten in trouble with the law for sexual assault or domestic violence over the years, or in Dante Stallworth's case, drinking and driving and killing somebody, there's something that has to be paid for those crimes. If Michael Vick has to go to jail, if Dante Stallworth went to jail, if guys like Ray Rice Greg Hardy, they basically lose their NFL careers. There has to be some sort of, debt paid for these crimes. And if I'm a team like the Houston Texans, I'm hoping the situation gets solved as soon as possible. So if these charges are coming down, they better come down quickly, because the accusations against Watson are despicable. And until he's cleared of all these charges, I don't want to see him on my football team or your football team or on a football field anymore. Because, again, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's no way that this many people are accusing him of these improprieties and these, R-rated accusations, unless there's something to it. And even if he is found innocent on all charges or all counts, the reality is that his reputation has been stained. And if you're a team like the Eagles or the Broncos or the Jets or the Dolphins or whatever team out there that may or may not have considered trading for him, you didn't trade for him because you don't want that stain on your organization. You don't want the bad smell coming from Deshaun Watson's off the field issues spread onto your organization. So hopefully this situation gets resolved very quickly. Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. We'll keep you updated on the latest in the world of sports. Of course, when the Phillies lineup comes out, if there's any more Eagles news coming out, we will keep you updated on all those fronts right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, you can text the show. 609-403-0973 is text support. Priority messaging to the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Download it for free from the Google Play Store and Apple Store. If you text the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, you get priority of your message being read on the air. Don't forget all of the Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, and high school sports coverage right there on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of CLC. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter. Watch the show, follow the conversation, join in as you watch the show as well. You can consume 97.3 ESPN on multiple platforms. You will get the Eric and other messages on the other side right here. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN.
The Eagles are back, and the Sports Bash has them covered like nobody else in South Jersey. E-A-G-L-E-S, Eagles! Listen for training camp updates every weekday at 4 p.m. during Football at 4 with Jeff Mosier, Adam Kaplan, and Andrew DeCecco. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 5:30. It's 97.3 ESPN.com Eagles insider Jeff Kerr and NFL insider Rob Motti from the Associated Press joins the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 5:30. It's the best Eagles and NFL training camp coverage around, and it's only on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Touchdown! The Eagles win! The Eagles win!
On 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's exclusive radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football.
On some models, excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes price sales. See dealer for details.
Have you seen what some dealers are now charging for new cars and used vehicles? It's outrageous. But at Bennett Chevrolet, you still pay what GM supplier employees pay for brand new Chevys. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates. That's not either or, you get both. And that can save you up to 25% off MSRP. And Bennett has 0% financing available to save you even more. Got a trade? Bennett's paying top dollar. And we mean top dollar. A minimum $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock. That's a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can tow to our lot. And if it's in good shape, we'll pay more. And we'll buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. And Bennett makes it so easy. No sales pressure, no negotiating, just pure joy. Because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So you can see why nobody beats Bennett Chevrolet. Nobody. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Sports Bash Saturday, Josh Hennig back with you here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on YouTube and Twitter. Just follow at 973 ESPN. Listen to the show on the 973 ESPN mobile app. And message the show, priority messaging through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And, of course, you can chime in on the YouTube channel and the text board as well, 609-403-0973. So to come, top of the hour, 1 o'clock, KC Joyner, the football scientist, NFL insider, will join us from The Athletic coming up at 1 p.m. to get more deeper into the NFL stuff. But I always like to hear from you guys as well out there. And we get to the messages in the order they came in. Josh Hennig here hanging out with you. Over on YouTube, Eric chimes in and says, what's going on, Josh? Dillard will never reach the level that Mailata has the ability to. And I agree with you, Eric. I think that it's become very obvious that Dillard, again, I don't know if it's mental. I don't know if it's biomechanical. I don't know if it's physical. I don't know what it is. But there's a reason why Dillard just doesn't have the it, whatever it is, okay? You know, Mailata never played football before he got to the NFL. He never took a snap in high school or college. He played rugby, a completely different skill set. It took him a few years to come in the Eagles camp, get reps, learn blocking, learn footwork, learn all the details of the NFL. You know, his story is insane. But the reality is that you take a guy in Mailata who never played high school and college football, and now whose ceiling is projected to be potentially a Pro Bowler at left tackle, compared to a guy in Dillard who was one of the top tackle prospects in all of high school football coming out of high school. He was a first-round pick in the NFL. He was considered one of the 3 best tackles in that draft class. And he doesn't have what Mailata has. So either Mailata is just an anomaly, like a once in a lifetime talent, or Dillard really is lacking that much. And it's hard to tell what it is because, you know, Mailata was drafted at the recommendation of Jeff Stoutland. All right. Jeff Stoutland was the guy who the Eagles sent to scout him at his workout. And the Eagles were one of only a handful of teams that went and actually watched Mailata work out for NFL teams. And Stoutland came back and apparently was pounding the table like, you got to draft this guy. We need this guy. This guy could be something. Don't let him go into undrafted free agency. We'll lose the bidding war. We need this guy. And the Eagles did, and now it's paying off. So on one hand, Howie Roseman listened to the right guy. Howie Roseman listened to Stoutland, and the Eagles drafted Mailata. So give him credit for that. But you also got to give them a demerit for Dillard because you drafted Dillard with the idea that this is one of the best left tackles in this draft class. Guys like him and Tyus Howard and others, you know, there's a whole debate. And Eagles they traded up to draft him. They jumped ahead of the Houston Texans, who apparently wanted Dillard badly. And according to reports, Dillard was a guy that Joe Douglas and the scouting department loved. They saw something in him. So Howie Roseman said, all right, I'm going to listen to my director of pro personnel. I'm going to listen to my scouting department. I'm going to draft this guy. So Howie Roseman, with 2 different players, listened to people and drafted them. But one guy looks like he's going to work out and one guy isn't. And I think that you got to give them credit, the Eagles organization, for Mailata, but you also got to give them a demerit for Dillard. I think it's both. I don't think it's one or the other. And like I said, I don't know if Dillard, there's something in his mind that's a shortcoming. I don't know if he just physically can't do certain things. I don't know if he's just that behind the curve in terms of his development physically and mentally as a player that doesn't allow him to take that next step. But whatever it is, it's holding him back. And Mailata has passed him on the track. And I happen to agree with a lot of analysts who are covering the Eagles right now who are saying that the only reason why the Eagles are not handing the job to Mailata is because they're trying to keep Dillard's trade value up. And I guarantee you that Dillard is going to be tradable because there are teams in the NFL who need offensive linemen. Offensive linemen it's arguably the hardest thing to acquire in this football league. Finding competent offensive linemen is insanely difficult. So, to me, I look at this situation and I say that Dillard is a nice trade piece that can get you a draft pick, or maybe if you have a position of need on the roster and you turn to maybe a team like the Houston Texans or a team like the Denver Broncos or a team such as the Seattle Seahawks, who are having a contract dispute right now with Dwayne Brown, or any team in the NFL and say, listen, give us a good pick or give us a player that we want on your roster who you're going to cut anyway. Now, if you want to go big game hunting, you know what you really do? Remember all those conversations about Zach Ertz being traded in the offseason? What if you package Ertz and Dillard together? I guarantee you're going to get a better return on both of them together than just one of them. And maybe there is a player out there. Maybe there's a linebacker. Maybe there's a cornerback. Maybe there's, I don't know, a player out there that another team is saying, we're going to move on from this guy, but the Eagles find valuable because maybe they scout him in the draft or because it's a player they tried to sign on free agency or whatever. We don't know what injuries are going to happen between now and the end of the preseason. What if there's an injury to one of the corners or the safeties again? What if Rodney McLeod, his progress in his rehab is not going very well? What if one of the receivers again gets injured? You know, Devontae Smith was back at practice doing drills with his helmet on, and they're trying to get his conditioning back up. So, you know, there's a lot of ways you can go about this and go and get somebody else's disposable guy and improve your roster if it's necessary. And I think you could do that. I definitely think you can. I'm just going to preach patience no matter what happens. A couple more of your messages here. Dan from EHT chiming in on the text board at 609-403-0973. Dan says a couple things. Does that mean if Dillard is traded that Peters will be brought back as a backup? No, it doesn't. I think the Jason Peters era is done for two reasons. One, because Doug Peterson's not here. It became very obvious in the last couple of years of the Doug Peterson administration in Philadelphia that he was obsessed with veteran players. He was so overly loyal to the guys that got the Eagles that championship ring, okay, that got them that Super Bowl trophy, that I think Doug became blind to reality. The reality is that Jason Peters didn't have it anymore. Alshon Jeffrey was too banged up. And instead of going with the younger players, they were obsessed with going with Peters and giving him all these and excuses for Peters. How many times did Peters come up with an excuse about how, well, Jason Peters' experience and his veteran leadership and his knowledge and blah, 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 when it was obvious that you could barely get into a squat to block? It was embarrassing. So Peters, I think, is done because Doug isn't here anymore. And I think also in part because, you know, no Joe Douglas anymore means that Andy Weidel is in charge of player personnel. He's now the man in charge of scouting and evaluation, handing those reports to Howie Roseman. And, you know, Joe Douglas is very big on experience, and he's very big on resume. Andy Weidel is less of a resume guy. He's more of a potential guy as a talent evaluator. So, whereas Douglas might look at Jason Peters and say, well, he's got a great resume, he's got football experience, Andy Weidel says his knees can barely bend, his back is bad, I don't want him. And I think for better or for worse, Howie Roseman is a guy who listens to his people. For better or for worse, Howie's going to listen to the evaluators and the scouts and the coaches. So if Doug Peterson tells him, I want Jason Peters, or if Jeff Stoutland says, I want Jordan Mailata, or if Joe Douglas says, I like Andre Dillard, Howie's going to do what his people say, for better or for worse. So I think the Jason Peters thing is done. Danny HT also chimes in and says, speed is very interesting with the Eagles. Skilled position players are really, really fast. Yeah, they are. Devonta Smith, here's the thing. Devonta Smith isn't 100% fast as he is quick because of his long strides, right? He's got the long strides that help him cover ground. Him and Travis Fulgham are great athletes. And because of their long strides, it makes them look faster, right? So I think that Devonta Smith is fast, but he's not like Rager and Watkins are faster in terms of just pure speed than Devonta Smith is. But Devonta Smith is 10 times faster than Alshon Jeffrey. So, and then of course Greg Ward, he's quick. He's got the agility out of the slot. I think that Dallas Goedert, you saw on the pass routes that he ran on Thursday night, that he is an explosive athlete. For you fantasy football players, Dallas Goedert is a must add in fantasy football. Whether Zach Ertz is here or not, I think Goddard's going to get a lot of looks on the offense, and I think he's going to be used a lot in a lot of formations. I mentioned this yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised in a situation where you have Goddard or Sanders, or Goddard and Howard, or Goddard and Gainwell lining up in the backfield on each side of Jalen Hurts, and that one of them will split out into the formation into the other slot position to give you 4 out, and then you leave one of them in the block next to Hurts. I wouldn't be surprised if Goddard is using that formation a lot. So, yeah, you're right. They do have speed. They do have that agility. They do have those guys that can go out there and do that. Now, really quick before I get to more messages, I just want to give you guys an update on the Eagles injury front. This is from the Eagles right now. So, remember, Devonta Smith has been upgraded from week to week to day with his knee. Also, Kevon Wallace is day-to-day with his groin issue. Craig James is day-to-day with a foot issue. Apparently, Jason Huntley suffered some sort of bruised ribs in the game on Thursday night, so he is day-to-day as well. Dillard is still week-to-week with a knee. I think he's getting traded. John Hightower is week-to-week with a groin. I don't think Hightower makes this team. I think Hightower is getting supplanted by Quez Watkins at this point. Jacoby Stevens, he's week-to-week with a hamstring. I think Stevens makes the team like Davion Taylor, who's week-to-week with a calf situation. I think they both make the team because you can either stash them away on the injured reserve and designate them to come back later in the year, and they can be contributors on special teams and certain defensive packages. I think Stevens and Taylor both have value in Jonathan Gannon's system. And if they're not 100% ready to go for the regular season, remember, you could designate a certain number of players to return after 8 weeks on the injured reserve list. So I think the Eagles, like last year, are going to use that injured reserve list very strategically. And then the players who will limited practice today, Isaac Sayamalu, who didn't play in the game Thursday night, he's got a hamstring he's working with. Jason Kroom, who's attempting to compete for the tight end position, although I think Tyree Jackson definitely kicked him down a couple notches after his play on Thursday night. LaRaven Clark, a guy who's competing to be a backup tackle on this team, he's ramping up his conditioning. Gerard Avery has a groin issue that has him limited at practice. And then Grayson Arnold, who can play all the defensive back positions, he's got a hamstring as well. So a lot of those guys, I wouldn't be surprised if part of the cuts for them to get down might be an injury settlement or two. Again, looking at the list of guys who are injured, I don't know where Jason Huntley fits into this team long term. I think he could be a candidate to be cut before the 53 come down. I think there's a lot of guys that there definitely be candidates to be cut down. A couple more messages coming in. I said I get to the Phillies a little bit later, but I do want to finish with the Eagles right now. Sports Bash Saturday. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 973 ESPN. You can text the show 609-403-0973, or you can message the show priority messaging through the 973 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City. Over on the YouTube channel, Steven chimes in and says, I would have said package Ertz and Dillard together to get Xavier Howard, but it's too late for that now. So here's the deal. The Xavier Howard thing, I think, was always a smokescreen. I think Howard said and did what he did to pressure the Dolphins into taking care of him. If you're Xavier Howard and you're one of the best corners in the league, and then your team signs Byron Jones in free agency for more than they're paying you, and you're better than Byron, that feels like a slight. So I think that was always a smokescreen. I don't think Howard ever wanted out of Miami. I just think he wanted Miami to take him seriously when it came to the whole situation. So I don't know if that was ever a legitimate option, Steven. But I do think that there's going to be a player or two who could be cut by an NFL team, and that team can call the Eagles and say, look, we're going to cut this guy. We know watching you guys on your tape. We have a guy who watches your tape this year, because every NFL team has guys who evaluate every team, right? You have guys who usually scouts who are designated to a certain division in the NFL. So like the NFC East scout, the NFC West scout, so on and so forth. So if you're a team like the Houston Texans, or you're a team like the Denver Broncos, or you're a team like, I'm trying to think of another team that could maybe use a left tackle at this point in time. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons, right? Or whoever it may be. You have a situation where that team can call you and say, look, we want Dillard. We don't want you to cut him, but we're going to cut this guy. Would you be interested in him? And we'll throw in like a 5th round pick with that player. Or a team can call about Ertz and do the same thing. Be like, look, we could use a tight end. A team like Buffalo could use a team like Buffalo, a team like maybe Arizona, a team that needs another tight end to add to their offense can say, look, we want Ertz. We don't want you to cut him. We'll give you this player with a pick. I think that's where you can definitely get involved. And just to respond to Hodor Horrific, who I can't read your whole text. So, but basically the NFL rule is it's not that it's unlimited number of players who can go on IR, but you have to designate them. And there's different tiers of guys who can return from the injured reserve. So the way it works is after a certain number of weeks, you can open a practice window. And the practice window means that you have 22 days to decide if that guy stays on the injured reserve list the rest of the year, or if you can activate them after the 8 weeks. So there's an unlimited number of players who you can activate their practice window, but there's not an unlimited number of players who you can bring off of the injured list. Because some of them you have to designate for either potential to return or out for the year. So there's different designations, and you have to designate every single player. And not every team wants to do that designation because for whatever reason, they have roster restrictions. A team like the Eagles last year, they completely mismanaged the injured list. And by the way, you could also maybe not place a guy and hide him on the injured list. You know what else you could do, Horrific? You could also give a guy an injury settlement, but you know he's not going to go, you know he can come back and play that year, okay? What if you don't want to put him on the injury reserve? You waive him with an injury settlement, but the injury settlement is kind of like a down payment to say, hey, 6-8 weeks, you're feeling better, maybe you can come back and work out for us, maybe we put you back on the roster. There's a lot of ways you can manipulate the system, but the big deal is that practice window with the injured list. So after, you have that practice window, you either have to go back on the injury list for the rest of the year, or you can come back on the roster. And I think for a team like the Eagles, they got to decide who's worth bringing back on the roster and who's not this year. I think it'll be a little different than last year because no more Doug Peterson, overly loyal to veteran players. I feel like a new coaching staff is a fresh start, a fresh set of eyes for this roster. I think it's a very good thing for the organization. I'm happy to see that. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to more NFL and Eagles throughout the show. Of course, the football scientist KC Joyner. We're hoping to have him come in to join us at 1 p.m. Also getting the Phillies coming up next. I got messages about the Phillies from Steven and Dan. We'll get to your guys' messages coming up next. The Phillies lineup is out. I will tell you who is in the lineup. And I'll tell you this as a tease. This lineup is definitely different than yesterday's. I'll tell you who's playing for the Phillies coming up at 4 o'clock today right here on Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live, as always, on YouTube and Twitter, where you can watch the show, join the conversation. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube at 973 ESPN.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason this Thursday night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
It's under center. Hitting back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
New Jersey car owners, stop what you're doing and come see AJ, the trade-in man, at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Oh, yeah, it's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
Cancel that service appointment. Let your tires go bald. Don't put another penny in that old car. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed, so cash in your vehicle now. Used car values are at an all-time high. Your car may be worth more than you think. New 2021 Nissan Frontier 4x4 truck. 0 due at signing. Lease $349 per month. Stuck in a loan or lease? We can get you released. We'll buy your car for cash, even if you don't buy a car from us. Worried about your credits? Don't sweat it. Get $3,000 back on every 2021 Nissan Murano and pay 0 interest for 60 months in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR based on $1,667 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. 36 months, 10,000 miles per year lease. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 9/6/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
I'm New Jersey Secretary of Agriculture Doug Fisher. Whether you like them sweet or spicy, Jersey Fresh bell and hot peppers liven up any dish, and they are in season now at your favorite farm market, farm stand, or supermarket. Stay loyal to local Jersey Fresh peppers.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here on Sports Bash Saturday. 10 nights at 3 p.m. Northwest. And as always, we are live on YouTube and Twitter. We can watch the show, join the conversation. Got a bunch of messages about the Phillies. You'll get them as what a disappointing loss last night. I mean, you know, you go into a game like that and you're like, all right, this guy, Tyler Mahle, he's a guy who he's not a great pitcher. He's a good pitcher. And you went out there and you just struggled. You couldn't get anything going. You didn't score any runs till the 9th inning. I mean, what a joke. I don't understand how this Phillies team can go from being these massive sluggers for 8 straight games to barely scoring for 4 days. It's just maddening sometimes. It really is. Oh, man. But the lineup is different today. The lineup is different, okay? So here's your lineup. Gene Segura back in the leadoff spot. Realmuto back in the lineup in the 2-hole. I really like Realmuto in the 2-hole. I think he supplies a great protection for Segura. I think this lineup is a good protection lineup. Okay. Harper in the 3-hole, number 2 in the National League and on base percentage. Gregorius in the 4, not a fan of it, but I understand it. McCutchen in the 5, Miller's 6, Torreyes back at 3rd, 7, Herrera in center is 8th, and then Matt Moore, cringe, is pitching the 9. So I think that I understand what they're trying to do in this lineup. They're trying to create a little more production and protection for the guys. Because think about it. Realmuto protects Segura. Harper protects Realmuto. Gregorius, you can't just pass over him. You have to pitch to him because McCutchen's behind him. And Brad Miller's been hot. It's absolutely in fuego as a hitter. Torreyes protects Miller. And then you got Herrera before the pitcher, so you kind of force the pitch to Herrera. It puts Herrera in a better position to get some more fastballs, which is really the only pitch he can hit at this point. So I like this lineup a lot better. I like it a lot better. And, Dan over on the messages text board, him and I disagree on this. Dan says, Herrera leading is if Herrera is leading off today, important leadoff hitter. Every time the lineup turns over, we get a bum batting. Listen, here's the problem with the leadoff hitter in today's game. The way today's game works is the leadoff hitter has become less important than ever because of the fact that your leadoff hitter is no longer a leadoff hitter after the beginning of the game. He's just another cog in the lineup. What's more important about the leadoff hitter is you need the guy in the 1 hole to match the guy in the 8 spot because the pitching spot in the lineup gets to be problematic. If you don't have a DH, your batting lineup gets difficult, right? So whoever is leading off has to be a compliment to whoever's in the 8-hole. And in many ways, Herrera can't compliment a guy like Jankowski because they're similar hitters. They're boomer bust hitters. Whereas Segura compliments Herrera and Herrera compliments Segura because Segura is the contact hitter, Herrera is the boomer bust. You can't have a lineup with too many similar hitters in a row. That was my problem with the lineup last night. You had too many guys. I understand what they were trying to do. Last night they were trying to do the left, right kind of thing. But when you have a pitcher, as Steven says, like Tyler Mahle goes out there, looks like a Cy Young candidate when he's not at all, you got to change things up. So at least they're changing it up today. Now, Steven mentioned a little earlier about how it's going to be a hard fight for the division. All right. Listen, you missed an opportunity yesterday with Wheeler. Wheeler didn't have his best stuff. And I said coming into this series, you got to keep up with the bats of the Reds. And you know what the Reds did? Votto, Castellanos, Winker. I mean, heck, you saw Suarez go out there. Eduardo Suarez, he hit a home run. Like I totally forgot about him. Talking about him on the show yesterday on the Sports Bash. Like, this lineup is full of sluggers, so the Phillies got to step up. So I'm glad to see Girardi responded to the game last night and said, we can't do that again. We got to go out here and do better. And especially considering it's stinking Matt Moore starting. I mean, good grief. I'm going to double check if has Matt Moore done anything good in the last month? Let me double check this. I mean, I feel like he was on that streak where he was giving us 6 runs every start for a while there. Remember that? Let's see here. Yeah, he see here. Let me see here. So since the month of July through the month of August, he has allowed 23 runs in 27 innings. Yeah, it's bad. I think the Matt Moore experiment is... I told you guys yesterday, can we just put Freddie Galvis on the mound with Roman Quinn and hope for the best at this point? That's what we were doing with Matt Moore going out there. Now, against the Nationals, he did go 4 innings, and in that game, he only gave up 2 runs and struck out 3. But his last appearance, he only pitched a third of an inning and gave up 3 runs. And then the 2 starts before that, he had back-to-back 6 earned runs he allowed against the Braves and the Nationals. He's so inconsistent. You're just hoping you get the good version of Matt Moore today. You really are. But listen, they got to hit. They got to hit in this series if they have any hope of coming out with 2 out of 3. They have to get 2 out of 3. They absolutely have to. Because you're going to go on the road. You got some easy games against Arizona. You got to take advantage of the fact that the Mets have a difficult schedule with the Dodgers, Giants, Dodgers on their lineup. And the Braves, people keep saying the Phillies have the easiest schedule in baseball. The Braves have like the 5th easiest schedule in baseball. So the Braves are right on your tail. You're tied in the division. You got to get 2 out of 3. It starts today at 4 o'clock. Hopefully the change in the lineup gets the Phillies there. Fingers crossed, hoping for the best. All right, we'll get back into more baseball a little bit later in the show. But coming up the other side, we'll talk more football. The football scientist, NFL insider KC Joyner. We hear him throughout the season on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. He will join us next, talk more Eagles and NFL. I'm Josh Hennig. Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app.
Health Update with Robin Stoloff, brought to you by Comfort Keepers, all the comforts of home.
The same routine over and over again can turn us into creatures of habit.
ESPN, home of the Philadelphia 76ers.
Simmons pokes it away, steals it, sidesteps him, and jams a two-hand throwdown.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here, Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter. You can watch the show, join the conversation. We'll be joined shortly by the football scientist KC Joyner here on 97.3 ESPN. Talk more about Eagles and the NFL. As the Eagles, by the way, can I remind everybody this? We had our first preseason games in 2 years this week and last week. Just think about that. We had no preseason games last year at all. Remember how sloppy some of the football was to start the season last year? I feel like I can promise you it will not be as sloppy this year. Okay? I feel pretty confident in that. So we're going to keep talking the football right now. We'll get to more of your messages a little bit later in the show. Text board 609-403-0973. Priority messaging into the show. DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks First Bank of Seattle City. And joining us right now on YouTube and Twitter to talk more about football and the Eagles and more, it is the football scientist. KC Joyner joins us live here on a Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. KC, good to see you. How you doing today?
Great. How are you?
Doing pretty good. And you know what? KC, I'm happy we have football. You know, with last week, we have football in some form, either NFL or college football, every week from the beginning of August to the middle of February. So, KC, I'm happy.
Oh, I'm thrilled. It feels so much back to, it's hard to say that in today's day, but feels so much back to normal to actually have the preseason games, actually have the Hall of Fame in 2 days worth of Hall of Fame Hall of Fame ceremonies and such. It's fantastic. And just be able to see the opening kickoff game. It just, can't wait.
Yeah. My only negative about the Hall of Fame is that whole thing where they were like, oh, we got to keep it short. And like, I love that Peyton made a joke about it, but like, I kind of understand they had to limit these guys because in the past you had Ray Lewis having a sermon on the stage for like an hour. So like I understand they had to limit them, but there's a part of me that almost felt like some of the guys felt rushed on Saturday and Sunday.
I would agree with that, and the thing is that you avoid the Ray Lewis situation, but you miss some of the good situations. Like there are people out there taking no disrespect against these people as players, and anybody contributors to the Hall of Fame, they belong. There are some times that they shouldn't be up there for more than 6 minutes of talk, and that there are other people who, if they're up for 6, you want them up for 60. So, yeah, I couldn't agree more there.
Like I could have had more Drew Pearson, honestly.
Yes.
I love that guy. He's just if anybody's got energy, it's Drew Pearson, to say the least.
He could have spent a couple minutes talking about how during the Hail Mary game he did a push-off at the end there. That was an illegal play. He should have been called for offensive pass interference. But, yeah. Spoken as a Steelers fan, so.
Spoken as a Steelers fan. Well, speaking of the Steelers, the Eagles did play the Steelers on Thursday night. And, Casey, what is something that you look for in the preseason? What are the things that when you see a team play in the preseason, are you looking for certain players? You're looking for certain situations? What is the best way to evaluate NFL preseason?
I like to look at it like a coach. I mean, a lot of coaches don't care too much about the preseason. Like Sean McVay, he said there's no way Matthew Stafford will even play it down. He's resting a ton of starters. You can tell McVay is trying to develop backups. So when you're looking at him, you're looking at, okay, you're trying to develop backups, and we're trying to see what you're trying to do with your backups. But the people who are going to put their starters out there for a time, the thing you're looking for, the thing I'm looking for at least, is what are you trying to do? Because usually you're going to try and work on things you're good at. You're going to try and get in the game. But as a coach, you're also trying to work on things that maybe you're not as good at. So, okay, I'm going to have you throw passes or try a play that we need to get a little more work, and maybe we need to see something live, and maybe we've done this in practice and it hasn't worked quite as well in practice. We want to try it in a game to know, can we put this in a regular season game? So I'm interested to see what coaches want to get out of their players, because I'll give you an example from that Steelers game, from that Steelers Cowboys preseason game. They wanted to see Najee Harris get out there, and heard Tomlin talk about it. He said, I want to see him get into a groove of preparing for a game and getting into a game. It's like, for whatever he likes about Najee Harris, I think he realizes that Harris is still a rookie and needs to get through some of those rookie jitters of playing in a game. So they're looking for him to do that. So it can be situational depending on every team.
Now, the other thing you mentioned the Steelers, before we get to the Eagles, I just want to mention this. I find the whole quarterback situation interesting for the Steelers because they're getting a lot of run to Rudolph, Haskins, and Dobbs. And, those are three guys who have NFL starts under their belt. So it's interesting to see how they're kind of shuffling those guys around, because I'm assuming at least the backup job is between Rudolph and Haskins. And it seems like so far Haskins has outperformed Rudolph.
With all the stuff that Haskins has had, he had the off-field incident a few weeks ago, and with all of that, you say, "Man, geez, why in the world did the Steelers go after Haskins?" And we're seeing that as fans. We're going, "Okay, well, this is a sign that this guy's maybe not up to it." But obviously, when you see him play in the preseason, it's all right. The talent is still there. The guy's raw because he only played one season at Ohio State, so. Talent's very raw there, but you can see why he's there. I hate to say it for Josh Dobbs too, because Josh Dobbs he's what is he, an astrophysicist, or he's a rocket scientist?
Aerospace engineer.
There you go, rocket scientist. Yeah. And I'd like to see him be able to play in the NFL, but it looks like, based on that preseason game, that the Haskins obviously is definitely in front of him, and so is Rudolph too. So it looks like the Steelers, they're not going to keep four. So it looks like that was the end of Josh Dobbs' Steelers tenure, probably.
Yeah, and I assume Dobbs just hangs around until the end of the preseason, just so they have an arm out there. So now flipping over to the quarterback with the Eagles, you and I were texting about this. I liked what I saw from Jalen Hurts, and I think the biggest thing to me with Hurts is, yes, he's in his fourth different offense in 40 years between Alabama, Oklahoma, Doug Peterson, and Sirianni. But it seems like every year he grows, he evolves, he adds something to the tool belt. We kind of put a little superhero spin on it. And to me, I like that because it shows that he's not stagnant. Like, one of the problems people have with a guy like Lamar Jackson coming out of college was he was really not polished as a passer. Kyler Murray, he had limitations as a passer. Russell Wilson, people were wondering, how quickly he's going to pick up another offense. And it seems like a guy like Jalen Hurts, second year in the NFL, he is really focused on developing as a passer.
He is, and Sirianni's kind of made it clear that, okay, he's my quarterback, but he's setting a standard. Like, he's got to reach this bar. I mean, he can do a lot of things, and I know I can incorporate the quarterback running game with him. I know there's things I could do with him, is what Sirianni's thinking, but he says, okay, well, you have to be able to do some other things passing him. But I think that Sirianni's going to know that they can lean on the ground game. We could talk about that a little more in just a second. I think he knows this. So as far as he can take this offense, as far as Hurts can go throwing the ball, and I think he's going to challenge him to do those things. And that's why I think he's going to put things – we talked just a second ago, what he's doing in the preseason. I bet Sirianni during the preseason wants to look at Hurts and go, okay, I want to know I'd like to see you in certain game situations. I'm not saying he's going to put him into the fourth quarter as a comeback situation or something of that nature, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him try to find situational things to go, okay, well, if it's 4th and 3, maybe we're going to see if we could do what the Chiefs did in that playoff game. We're going to see if we can, if you can hit a pass like that, if we're going to be aggressive and try and find other things that we can trust Jalen Hurts to do, because this offense is still going to go as far as he can go. The running game will be fine, but as far as the offense as a whole, the passing game, it's only going to go as far as he can go. So they are going to have to challenge him to do some things that maybe, again, you might not be that aggressive in the preseason normally, but I think they need to see, because Sirianni has to have an answer to his question of how aggressive can I be with this offense.
Well, you mentioned the running game. I'm glad you brought that up, because you look at Sirianni and offensive coordinator Steichen's backgrounds. But the Chargers and Colts, they used all their running backs. It wasn't just a one-man situation. In Indianapolis, people talk about Jonathan Taylor, but Naheem Hines got a lot of run to the point where people were putting him in their fantasy lineups. Out there in San Diego, it wasn't just Melvin Gordon, it was 3 other guys out there. So you have 2 offensive coaches and the head coach and the coordinator who are both going to use running backs. I think it's going to benefit the Eagles because you saw it on Thursday night. Jordan Howard, huge pass block. Kenneth Gainwell, first down run, catching out of the backfield. We know what Miles Sanders can do. So I'm going to assume that the Eagles are going to use all their running backs in this offense.
I would think so. I do fantasy football stuff, obviously, and I've been starting to move Boston Scott up my ranks too, because I'll tell you something, a couple things about the Eagles running game. One, last year, I have a metric called good blocking rate. It measures how often an offense gives its ball carriers quality run blocking. Believe it or not, this surprised me when I first saw it, but again, this is something that goes through a deep dive review of the 2020 running game. The Eagles had the best good blocking rate in the league by like a few percentage points.
Wow.
They were that good. And you're talking, they had 14 different offensive line combinations. So Stoutland, their offensive line run game coordinator coach, does a fantastic job. So you give him players he's got coming back this year. The story of the offensive line they got coming back this year. You have to figure there's going to be an upgrade there. They're probably not going to have 14 different offensive line combinations this year. It took a huge confluence of circumstances to make that happen. You don't send an NFL record like that when you don't want, unless you have just a massive amount of injuries. So they're going to be healthier. They're already going to have talent returning. We know what Sanders can do, but Boston Scott, one of the things I'm looking for this offseason, I was grading the running game, is what type of vision does this back have? What type of how good is he at seeing the hole? How good is he at being able to cut back? How good is he at making adjustments on the run? Derrick Henry is probably the best. James Robinson is probably the second best. It's a very small sample size. I thought Boston Scott was probably like just a half step behind them as far as his ability to read defenses on the run. As far as being able to say, okay, we're doing outside zone, and do I go outside? Do I cut it here? Do I go back inside? His vision of being able to see what he needed to do on a play or making an adjustment on the fly that, hey, I've decided to make this cut, but you know what? This is probably the cut I should have made. I need to cut it back inside. He did that. He was phenomenal at doing that. Again, small sample size, and you're not going to be able to rely on him. He's not going to be like a bell cutback. I'm not saying he's Derrick Henry in that respect. But as far as his ability to read defenses, he's superb at that. So if you take him and Sanders, and they can probably, because of that, and because of Sanders' durability history, I would think they don't want to rely just on one back. And I think because of Sirianni's history, I think that are going to want to lean on the ground game. Plus, you've got Hurts and what he can do in the ground game, too. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Eagles. They're not going to be like the Ravens and run the ball 500 times, but I would be surprised to see them easily in the top 10 of rush attempts this year.
KC Joyner, the football scientist, joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN at KC Joyner TFS on Twitter. Of course, you can hear him throughout the full football season on the Sports Bash, previewing and recapping every week of the NFL season here on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, you mentioned the fantasy aspect. Real quick side note on that. I heard someone mention that if you're going to draft a quarterback in fantasy, you want it to be a quarterback who can run a little bit, because they pointed to the fact that even Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers gain over 200 rushing yards a year. And the point they were making is that Jalen Hurts could have a lot of value, because even if he doesn't get you a lot of touchdowns per se, the rushing yards can have a lot of value in the PPR. So explain it to folks a little bit.
For quarterbacks, the problem is you want to at least have I'm always a big advocate in fantasy football, setting the floor, where you want to have whatever players you have at your position, that if you draft an RB1, you want to have an RB1 and an RB1, so that you set a floor, that you're not getting RB2 production of your RB1, et cetera, et cetera. There are different ways you can do that. I mean, you don't have to necessarily do that, but I'm really a big fan of making sure you set the floor. The problem at quarterback is if you don't get, you say 200 yards, okay, that's 20 points, maybe a couple of touchdowns. If you're not getting 20 to 30 points in production out of your quarterback in a running game, and it can be, hey, if it's you may get 100, but you get a couple 3 touchdowns because they put you on sneaks at the goal line and things. It could be things like that. If you're not getting 20 or 30 points out of your quarterback over the course of a season, it's just really hard to make that up in the passing game. You have to throw a lot to make it up. If you have a quarterback who is going to, who has that, and if you're talking 30 points in the passing game, okay, 4 points per touchdown, you got to throw a couple 3 touchdowns, you got to throw for 200 yards. I mean, it's not easy to make up. Whereas a couple 100 yards is only 20 yards per game, and if you get 3 touchdowns, it's a touchdown every 4 games. So it's where you want to at least get that level of production with somebody like Hurts. The thing is, if you get a quarterback, like I've got this quarterback system I use, this algorithmic system for grading fantasy quarterbacks. It doesn't take long for fantasy points to run again to just shoot you right up the rankings. You can go even a guy like Trey Lance. I had him in my overall grades pretty low, but I have an upside grade for a player too. And my upside grade, not long ago, he was ranked 9th in upside grade. Like if he gets in there and plays even half the season and gets 500 rushing yards, 400 rushing yards, his numbers could skyrocket up to that point where he's a top 10 quarterback. So rushing yards for quarterbacks, rushing production adds up really quickly, and if you don't have it, it's hard to make up.
Quick question about the Eagles defense before we get some other NFL topics. Jonathan Gannon comes from the backgrounds of Mike Zimmer and Eberflus over there with the Colts, so we know no more wide nine. We saw a concept of it on Thursday. Obviously, they're going pretty vanilla, but we saw the Eagles. They weren't afraid to bring the blitz. They weren't afraid to, at least bring a little more pressure from other positions than what Jim Schwartz used to do. So I got to ask you, how can the change in the defense benefit an Eagles team that last year there were times they got completely eviscerated on the second and third levels of the defense on pass plays? So how can the change of the defense prevent them being embarrassed like they were last year?
A couple things Eagles have had trouble with over the years. Actually, when you go to that wide nine, you've got the wide, the wide nine technique. Your ends are going to be so wide, you could be gashed up the gut. And I think it spreads your defense out just a little too much. I'm going to say you're overplaying, because again, you use it situationally and such, but you are really overplaying for the outside zone, for the what we call the wide zone and things, where you're just playing too much for that, and you can get gashed up the middle. But I think the biggest thing the Eagles are going to want to do, you can prevent all big plays in the passing game, and the Eagles, obviously, like every team, wants to do that. I think one of the things they're going to concentrate on this year is stopping big plays in the ground game, because for years, we've been talking about that on the show the last 3 or 4 years, that the Eagles will rank really well. They've always concentrated on saying, we're going to one gap, we're going to get upfield against the run, we're just going to be really aggressive. And when we do this, you're going to have one of the best good blocking rates. I talked about that metric. We're going to have the best good blocking rates allowed on defense, meaning that when you run the ball against us, you're not going to have very much success. You're not going to be very productive you're not going to get consistent ground gains, because we're defeating your blocks. The problem was, when you did get a good run against the Eagles, when you did get good blocking, they were getting a lot of times close to 10 yards per carry. I mean, and you can't allow that. Meaning, if you get good blocking against the Eagles, you were going to get big gains. And when teams saw that and realized, okay, and there's a variety of factors that could do that. It can be that, but a lot of times it's your safeties aren't very good at coverage. You're not shedding blocks enough. You're doing different things. You're missing tackles. Whatever it is, if an offense knows if we get good blocking against you, we can get nearly 10 yards per carry, they're going to keep doing it. And the Eagles want to keep teams from doing that. So I'll bet that's something that they concentrate pretty heavily on, making sure they don't allow the big gains of the ground game. And it might be that you get more consistent ground gains. Maybe you get they get a higher good blocking rate, but overall, I bet the net's going to be a positive for them.
Let's get to some of the other teams around the NFC East, because I'm curious what your thoughts on them. First start with the team that's on Hard Knocks. So history tells us that if you're on Hard Knocks, you don't go to the Super Bowl. There's never been a team that's on Hard Knocks that went to the Super Bowl. So you got that going against the Cowboys. Also, according to ESPN stats and info, the last 10 times the Cowboys have been favored to win the division in Vegas, they only won the division once. So you now have two precedents that are going against the Cowboys. So, Casey, what are the Dallas Cowboys in 2021?
I'm curious to see the Cowboys a few years ago. Remember a few years ago when they had the dominant offensive line and Zeke was at the top of his game, and they won the division and they lost in the playoffs things, but they were a dominant run blocking team. They keep getting away from that, and I don't know why, because it's like, that's what you guys were. That's what you were. I mean, frankly, that's what they were back in the 90s when they were at the triplets. So they were the dominant. I mean, for whatever else that team was, they dominated in the ground game. And you look at them and you go, okay, well, you guys should get back to that. And yet they keep going, we don't make this a Dak Prescott-centric offense. We want to throw the ball a ton downfield. We want to do all these things. Like, okay, that puts a lot of pressure on the defense. That's when you get into shootout games. And shootout games, as I've mentioned 100 times on the show over the years, they're 50-50 propositions, even for the best offenses. So I'm like, you guys need to protect your defense. But I keep looking, I'm going, okay, Zeke, I wrote about this for The Athletic over the past couple of weeks. One of the things that Zeke has been over the past 3 years, he's seen his good blocking yards per attempt. It's a metric that measures how productive you are when you get good blocking. His good blocking yards per attempt went from really good to mediocre to last year. He was 41st out of 46 backs in that category. He was terrible. And I think that's why he's started to get back in better shape, because he realizes if I don't get in better shape, Pollard was much better in good blocking yards per attempt, even much more burst. I think Zeke realizes this. So if you've got Zeke and you've got Pollard, and you know you can give Pollard 100 carries, 150, and you're not going to wear the guy down at all, that's perfectly fine. 10 carries a game he'll be able to deal with that. So if you've got those two there, and you need to protect your defense, and Dak Prescott now has the shoulder, he keeps having the shoulder problems, why aren't they going back to that approach? It doesn't seem like they're doing it, but I think soon enough they're going to have to wise up. It's McCarthy, and he's done it before in Green Bay, to say, we need to run that same kind of setup there and stop trying to make this such a Dak Prescott aerial show, because that's not going to be the way we need to win.
Let's bounce over to the Giants. I feel like the Giants are the team that has the most question marks in the division because, one, their quarterback, nobody knows what the heck he is at this point. And two, I feel like every year it's, hey, the Giants need to improve their offensive line. Hey, the Giants need to improve their pass rush. And every year we're wondering what happened to the offensive line and what happened to the pass rush. And I'm still convinced they didn't replace Tomlinson on that D-line. So what do we make of the Giants with their questions coming into this season?
I think they know that they need to win the offensive defensive lines. I think they know they need to win that battle, and they're concentrating on it. They just don't have the players to do it. Their offensive line, they were 29th in good blocking rate last year. They were terrible. So I think they realized that that's what they need to do. Although I'll say this, the addition of Kenny Golladay, who unfortunately for them is banged up again during the preseason. So can you rely on the guy for a full 17-game season? But the addition of Kenny Golladay, if you get him back and Bark is, he's back, but is he, excuse me, is he going to be what he was before? Are they going to be able to bell cow him at all this year, or are they going to take it up week 4 to do it? But if you say, okay, well, Daniel Jones is great at running, very good at running the ball for a quarterback, and if he can start playing a little bit better, excuse me, you've got Golladay, you've got Barkley, you've got Ingram, you've got Shepard, you've got some other players and they're passing. You've got the makings, talent-wise, of a pretty good offense. And their defense also is not that bad of a defense. And Judge, I'll give him credit, I think he knows how to take I think he knows, okay, I need to accentuate what I do well, what our team does well. Don't try and he's not going to go in there. He's from the Belichick theory of, okay, I don't need to force my team to play a particular system. I'm going to adjust my system to what we do well. So they've got the makings of having a pretty good team, especially on offense. And again, they don't want to get the shootout games, but they could do whatever they want on offense if they can get their blocking. And they put a lot of investments in their offensive line, but they've got to have that offensive line stabilized. Because if you're 29 is a good blocker rate, I don't care if Barkley's back to what he was. You're not going to go anywhere.
Let's go over to Washington. Obviously, Washington, great front seven, right? They elite front seven of players. But the question is the offense. You add Curtis Samuel, another year with Antonio Gibson, the offensive line, not 100%. Ryan Fitzpatrick, what happens there? Washington, I feel like I know their defense. I know that defense is a top 5 defense in the NFL potentially, right? But the offense, that's the part that I'm wondering, can they get them more than 7 wins this year?
Big question mark there. And I mean, Gibson I forget exactly, but I know he's close to the top 10 in good blocking yards per attempt. So he's a very good back. Their offensive line they've got talent for these teams are not, it's not like even the Cowboys. All the NFC East teams are trying to build quality offensive lines. I still think, again, the Eagles probably the best offensive line coach in the division, which is a huge plus, which is why Stoutland survived the transition. He's still there. And I think if he hadn't been there, he'd be gainfully employed somewhere else. But I think for Washington, the problem is that you've got Fitzpatrick. And I keep looking at him going, okay, well, Fitzpatrick he's a comet. He comes in and he have Fitzmagic for 4 or 5 weeks, and he does exceptionally well, and he's really aggressive. And mind you, I think that offense could use some of that. But he always wears out. You always see him only play a few games, and then you've got to bench the guy. And I think that right now, look at him going, okay, well, if that doesn't work out with him, you're going to play Heineke. That's going to be your quarterback if it doesn't work out with Fitzpatrick. So if I'm Washington, I'm trying to find a way that I want to get what I can out of Fitzmagic, but I can't just have him play 4 or 5 games, because if that's the case, they're going to be dangerous for that stretch, and then he's going to throw 4 interceptions, and you're going to sit him on the bench, and you're going to put Heineke out there, and it doesn't matter how good that defense is. In this league, if you've got somebody like Heineke playing, and I know what he's done recently, and okay, maybe he's going to be that good, but we probably know what his ceiling is. And if he's playing like we'd expect Taylor Heineke to play, I don't care if you've got the great defense. You're just not going to put enough offense. And in this league, if you can't put up 20 points on a consistent basis, you're just going to have trouble going over 500.
KC Joyner, the football scientist, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN at KC Joyner TFS on Twitter. All right, KC, before I let you go, tell me the team or the position battle or the player that's outside the NFC East that you're watching very closely as we get started in 2021. Is there a team or a position battle? What is something that you're saying we got to keep an eye on this?
I want to see the Jets because I like what they're doing up there. They've got a really good coach, and one of the players I'm really looking at who I think is he could change their offense and change the structure of where they can go and how dangerous they can be. I'm not saying they're going to win the division or anything of that nature, but we could probably see the Jets start to become a much better team. Is Michael Carter. Michael Carter, when he was at North Carolina, he did great on the field. I think it's 300-yard game, 308 yards against Miami. So he did great on the field. But the thing is, they named him team captain at one point. He won the UNC Strength and Conditioning Award, so the guy can hit the weight room. And he was only the 19th in UNC football player to be a 3-time all-academic, all-ACC pick. So the guy's really good at the books. It's why he's already running with the ones there. And if you take a guy like him, remember Bill Parcells said this about Curtis Martin years ago when his personnel guy was saying, hey, we could sign Martin in free agency. We're stacked at running back. Parcells like, whoa. He said, you can get Curtis Martin? He said, Curtis Martin, if we get him, he'll be the most talented guy we have. He'll be the hardest worker we have, and he'll be the best person that we have on this team. He said that will make everybody better. I don't want to put Carter into a Hall of Famers category yet for 100 reasons, but he brings a lot of those same things to the table that you get him out there, and he could be one of your best players. He could be your hardest worker, smart guy, can make the transition immediately. It's a guy like him. People keep talking about the quarterback position, but you get a guy like him, and you can put him in the backfield. And I don't know how many carries he can carry because he had a platoon set up at UNC, but if you can get him out there and make him even a lead back, it could change the dynamic of your offense, can help your defense, can help your ground game. I think he could be a difference maker. So I'm really paying a lot of attention to Michael Carter.
All right, Casey, before I let you go, tell the folks about Pay Dirt.
Pay Dirt. If you want to win your fantasy league, you really can't do so using the same recycled information that you use everywhere else. You need Pay Dirt, the subscription service that helped Phil and Jerry Hooten win $500,000 in the FFPC main event last year. You get an industry-leading draft guide. You get insanely detailed start-sit charts. You get waiver pick help 3 times a week, chats with me, and more. You can check it out at thefootballscientist.com. And if you use the discount code GIL, as in Mike Gill, the show we usually do, if you use the discount code GIL, you get 10% off any Pay Dirt subscription, again, at thefootballscientist.com.
KC Joyner at KC Joyner TFS on Twitter, footballscientist.com. As he said, you can hear him throughout the year on the Sports Bench. He was kind enough to join us for a little August conversation about football because, Casey, football is my number one sport. When football comes on, I love it. And no offense to baseball, basketball, hockey, but football is number one for me. So I always appreciate you jumping on.
Glad to be here. I appreciate it.
Josh Hennig, Sports Bash Saturday here in 97.3 ESPN FM. Always great talk with KC Joyner. Appreciate him jumping on. We'll get back to your guys' thoughts and comments coming up next on the text board, 609-403-0973. Priority direct messaging into the show from the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter where you can join the conversation, comment, Eagles, NFL, Phillies, whatever's on your mind this weekend. Hey, Tua Tagovailoa had a really nice pass to Mike Gesicki. I don't know if that really means anything. It's the preseason, but hey, it was a nice pass. So always good to see South Jersey's own Mike Gesicki playing well in the NFL. So with all your comments coming up next right here on 97.3 ESPN, this is Josh Hennig, and this is Sports Bash Saturday.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. The Eagles continue the 2021 preseason this Thursday night, hosting the New England Patriots at the Link.
It's under center. Hidden back, hit, and he is dropped back at the 30. It's Bennett with the sack.
Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 7:30. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
Want to go see the Birds play in Vegas against the Raiders this fall? Travel to the game in style with Philly Sports Trips. Check out their travel packages today at phillysportstrips.com.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here at Sports Bash Saturday, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live, as always, on YouTube and Twitter. Plethora of ways to get in on the action. We got some comments on the stream to get to as well. Got to talk some Phillies. I know we've got some messages about that. Also, messages on the stream. Got messages on the text board. Got messages also. You can direct message the show from the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Priority messaging through the app. Of course, you want to download the app, listen to 97.3 ESPN wherever you go. Get latest on the Eagles, Phillies, Sixers, and Flyers, and local high school sports all year long. So a lot of benefits from the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. A couple things to get to here. Phillies back in action at 4 o'clock today. Talk some more NFL. I know Dan EHT is very happy that Odubel Herrera is not in the leadoff in the lineup. Listen, I understand that. I agree. There are certain players who just shouldn't be at certain places in the lineup. But to me, it's how the whole lineup is constructed, to me, is more important than one single player. The Phillies bats didn't have trouble scoring runs because Odubel Herrera was in the one spot. They had trouble because the entire lineup was misconstructed. Okay? Those are two different things. So, to me, when I look at the Phillies, and I'll just pull up their lineup from yesterday real quick to explain this in specificity. The problem with the lineup today, by the way, a little Phillies news I'll get to in just a moment, but the lineup yesterday, the problem wasn't Herrera in the one. The problem was you had guys like Miller and Torreyes back-to-back. Torreyes and Herrera are both boom and bust guys. Janikowski is a boom and bust hitter. Miller is a boom and bust hitter. What you did is you took your most consistent hitters, Segura, Harper, Realmuto, and bunched them all together 2 through 4. The rest of the lineup was mostly boom or bust guys aside from McCutchen. You have to alternate your hitters. You got to alternate your hitters to protect them to make sure they get the best pitches possible. So Segura is consistent. He's protected by Realmuto because while Segura is more of an average hitting hitter, Realmuto is more of a contact power hitter. Harper is the second best on base percentage in the National League. He's behind Realmuto. Gregorius is the boomer bust guy. McCutchen's consistent. Miller's boomer bust. Torreyes is boomer bust. So what happens is that instead of bunching Realmuto, Harper, Segura together in the middle of the lineup, you're putting them at the top of the lineup to allow when you go to the end of the lineup and have the pitcher and then you switch over the lineup again, you kind of switch around where guys are. I think you can't have McCutchen too low in the lineup. Personally, I would put McCutchen in the 4 hole and have Gregorius 5. But I understand the idea is that eventually when Hoskins comes back, they want to have Hoskins, McCutchen, and Harper together. But for now, at least this lineup has a little bit of change in it. The other thing is I don't like the idea of just in general. I don't like the idea of Realmuto in the 4 slot because I don't think he provides enough of a threat in the lineup. Couple messages coming in. Steve follows up on the Phillies and says, so Josh, if the Phillies fall a game short of the playoffs, where do you see them going in free agency? And then Steven says his opinion is they should go after Starling Marte, bullpen arms, and another starter. So here's the thing, Steven. To me, if they don't make the postseason, then I think that is an opportunity for Dave Dombrowski to go to ownership and say, all right, we did things your way. Now we're going to do it my way. It's an opportunity for Dombrowski, who comes in there with a clear set of eyes, a completely different opinion on the organization, the team. He can go to ownership and say, all right, I tried to do what you wanted me to do because you made some moves before I even got here. Now we're going to do things my way. And I think that's where the big change for the Phillies is less about who they're going to add in free agency, but who they're going to subtract. I think it's becoming very clear that this team is going to move on from Didi Gregorius. They're going to move on probably from Hoskins. They're going to change the pitching staff. They're going to make some subtractions more than additions. I think Dombrowski has no ties to anybody on the roster directly, aside from the trades for Gibson, Kennedy, and Galvis. He didn't sign Bryce Harper. He didn't trade for JT Realmuto. He didn't trade for Vinny Velasquez, all right? He didn't acquire some of these guys who are on this team, any of these guys who are on this team, aside from the trade deadline. So he has no allegiance to these guys. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that Zach Wheeler is a keeper. You got to keep Wheeler. If Eflin is healthy and focused, he has a lot of value for this starting rotation. The Gibson trade is going to pay off because he's still under contract next year. So I think that with pitching-wise, you know what you got. Suarez obviously is showing you something. But guys like Neris, guys like Kinsler, who they already basically bailed on, these guys that they brought in before Dombrowski got here, I think those guys are evident that this team is going to move on from them because they were not Dombrowski guys. Now, Steve follows up and says that Bohm has got to go, Vinny V has got to go, and that Hoskins needs to stay. Here's the problem with the Bohm-Hoskins thing. I think Bohm has more potential as a hitter than Hoskins, and he's younger. The problem with Bohm is that I think that he hit that second-year slump, and because of the fact that this team is forcing him to play a position that he really is not fully equipped to play. He either needs to be a left fielder or a first baseman. And if you ask Bohm to spend an entire offseason training to be one of those two positions, I think he would be at least 3 to 4 times better defensively than he is right now. The reason why I say move on from Hoskins is this. I think Hoskins has the biggest trade value on this team. He's under contract control for a few years. I think Hoskins is better as a DH than a first baseman. I think that if you're choosing between Bohm and Hoskins, I think just Bohm has more potential. Personally, I'm frustrated with Bohm a lot, but I don't know how much of that is all his fault. I think the team has kind of put him in a bad situation. To me, Hoskins is a DH in the American League. He's a younger version of Nelson Cruz, a younger version of JD Martinez. He's a younger version of those kind of guys. He's a guy that can go out there, he can bash you 30 home runs and 90 RBI, but you really don't want him at first base because he's going to compromise you at first base. Now, to me, you keep either Bohm or Hoskins. If you keep Hoskins, Bohm has to go. If you keep Bohm, Hoskins has to go. You can't keep both of them. I think part of the problem with the Phillies is, and this is something that guys like Mike Gill and Bob Wankel and Frank Lewis have talked about during the week, and that is, I think the Phillies were keeping both Bohm and Hoskins because they were under the impression that there would be a National League DH long term. And because they didn't bring the DH back this year, it kind of compromised their roster construction. And the combination of that and Dave Dombrowski coming in halfway through the offseason, I think hampered this roster construction overall. So back to your original question, I think that if the Phillies fall short of the playoffs, there's a lot of ways they can go. I like the Starling Marte edition, although I don't know. I don't know if Philadelphia is going to be the team that can offer him the best deal. I feel like there are some other teams that might be able to offer him equivalent or more money this offseason. A team that I wouldn't be surprised if they make a strong run at a guy like Marte is a team like the Twins, because apparently they don't want to, they're not sure if they want to resign Byron Buxton. So if you move on from Buxton and you get Marte to replace him, the Twins can go out there and make a strong push for him. I wouldn't be surprised if a team like, for example, you think about Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay could always use more outfield bats. They might pursue him hard. So the Phillies might not be the only team pursuing him, okay? Also, what if the Dodgers decide to package some of their outfielders and trade away some guys to get some new players? I wouldn't be surprised if they go after Marte as well. So I got to say, wait for the offseason to play out. But I agree with you. The bullpen arms, the starter, they got to add more pitching. I 110% agree with that. Wow, one more message come in. Tom from Margate chiming in, 609-403-0973 says, Josh, even if the Phillies make the playoffs, they really need to add more pitching this offseason. And you're 100% correct. Hoskins has the best trade value. That's from Tom and Margate. Yeah, Tom, it's not that I hate Hoskins. It's not that I don't like him, but I'm under the impression that Dombrowski is going to make moves this offseason. He is not going to sit on his hands. He is not a complacent individual. You watch his time when he turned the Marlins into the 97 World Champions, when he took the Tigers from a team of misery into a perennial contender, when he joined the Red Sox, had to clean up the mess of the previous GM before him. I think it was that Ben Cherington, I think it was. I got to double check that. But, the job that Dombrowski's always done, he has two principles that he has always done. The one thing that he has always done year in and year out when he is an executive is, number one, he has gone out of his way, okay? He has gone out of his way to make sure, by the way, yeah, it was Ben Cherington from 2012 to 2015 was the GM. Yeah, he was the guy who took over for Theo Epstein, and he made some mistakes in terms of signing guys and making decisions in the minor leagues that really frustrated a lot of people. It's part of the reason why they brought in Dombrowski in the first place. But anyway, he has a history of making trades. He has a history of making moves. And when I look at the Phillies, I just understand, knowing the man in charge and knowing the guy who's his GM, Sam Fold, who played for organizations like the Rays and the A's that are known for manipulating the market, the trade market, the free agent market to get better players. I believe Dombrowski and Fold are going to find a way to make this team better. And sometimes you got to make subtractions to make additions. And I don't know if Bohm has the trade value that Hoskins does. So to me, if they're going to make a big move this offseason in terms of the trade market, Hoskins might have to be the guy. Because the only other guy you would even maybe consider trading that has a lot of value might be Aaron Nola. And I don't know. If I had to choose between Nola and Hoskins, who I'm trading, I'm probably trading Hoskins over Nola. Because you need all the pitching you can get. All right, we'll wrap up the show coming up on the other side. Keep the messages coming. Text board 609-403-0973. We are also live on YouTube and Twitter, where you can chime in on the show as you watch the show. Just follow at 973ESPN. And don't forget about the 973 ESPN mobile app. Priority messaging through the app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
South Jersey's sports station, 97.3 ESPN. Wake up weekday morning 6 to 10 with Keyshawn, Jay, Will, and Zubin. Followed by Greeny with Mike Greenberg from 10 till noon. At noon, it's Bart and Hahn. Then from 2 to 6 p.m., it's South Jersey's #1 rated sports talk show, The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. And from 6 to 7, Josh Hennig hosts Game Night. Plus 97.3 ESPN. ESPN is your exclusive play-by-play home for Philadelphia Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers, the NBA playoffs and finals, Major League Baseball, and the World Series, the NFL Draft, Monday, Thursday, and Sunday Night Football, the NFL playoffs, and Super Bowl 56. We are South Jersey's sports leader. 97.3 ESPN. And listen anywhere with the free mobile app.
Football season is about to kick off, and that means it's time to list your football future bets on PropSwap. Did you know before the season started last year, the Buccaneers were 60-1 to win it all? Now that's a futures bet. You just never know what can happen. Or hey, maybe you do. Sports bettors cash in early and often when they list long shots on PropSwap. The average monthly seller makes $500 a month on PropSwap just posting and selling tickets. So join them by going to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. PropSwap, where America buys and sells sports bets.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Final segment of the show, Josh Hennig, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle. We are live, as always. You watch the show on YouTube and Twitter. Thanks again to KC Joyner for joining the show a little bit later. All the messages that came in, Dan from EHT, Tom in Summers Point, Steve as well as Eric, Hodor the Horrific on YouTube. Appreciate all you guys chiming in. I promise you I get you the Phillies news that came out just a bit ago. So here's the deal. The Phillies have reinstated Bailey Falter from the COVID list. They've recalled Adonis Medina from AAA. They've optioned Mickey Moniak, and they've designated David Paulino for assignment. So Phillies getting 2 more pitchers back. I think the Falter addition is the biggest addition because Falter has shown himself to be a guy who can come in, can burn some innings for you. He's not going to be like Mauricio Rivera and just give up bombs left and right. No, he's going to go out there and just be a productive, solid pitcher. You know, Falter this year, I understand people are like, well, he's got a 4.5 ERA. And the problem is that ERA is misleading. Because when you actually break down the games that he has played for the pitch for the Phillies this year, that 4.5 ERA is from one game. He had that one game where he had 5 earned runs against the Cubs. If you take every game before that Cubs game, he allowed a total of 4 runs in 14 innings, had 16 strikeouts in those innings. And since the Cubs game, where he allowed 5 runs, his last 2 appearances before hitting the COVID list, the Phillies won both of those games. And he had 4 strikeouts and 2 1/3 innings. So Falter, I think, is a huge part of getting this pitching staff and this bullpen fixed up. So I'm Josh Hennig. I'll be filling in for Mike Gill again on Monday as his team is out there playing for the World Series for the 13-year-olds. So I'll be back on Monday. Billy Schwein, Pete Thompson in the locker room tomorrow at 11 a.m. You're on 97.3 ESPN.
When you support your local small businesses, it helps keep your neighbors employed, helps kids save for college, and strengthens your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts local businesses in the spotlight.
First Bank of Sea Isle City, Cape County's community bank.
Dr. Lyle M. Back for everything from skincare to cosmetic surgery. Go to ilovelyleback.com.
Egg Harbor Independent Branch Leader at Charles Schwab in the Consumer Square Shopping Plaza.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. Visit fillingmarble.com.
Intuitive Women's Health in Summers Point, accepting new patients. Schedule an appointment today online at intuitivewomenshealth.net.
East Coast Roofing, Siding and Windows services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses from Town Square Media South Jersey.